My name is Linda Kerr, and I'm a JCSP librarian in Killenarden Community School in Tala. The JCSP Library Project was set up to help improve literacy in Ireland's most disadvantaged schools. To date, there are 30 of our demonstration libraries in Ireland. They are fully funded by the Department of Education and employ a full-time qualified librarian. My job is to promote reading for pleasure within a community that does not come from a culture of books. I also facilitate classes in literacy, numeracy, and information evaluation. The other aspect of my job allows me to provide softer services such as space for clubs to meet, get other facilitators in for workshops like storytelling, drama, or filmmaking, as well as being a general safe space when students need it. Thus, my relationship with students is not the same as an educator. It is necessary that they feel more relaxed with me so I can encourage involvement in all the library has to offer. Having authority over students is not conducive to fostering a good relationship with reluctant readers or the less academically minded students. It is in this capacity that I have been privy to the language they use between themselves. Over the years I have spent at Killenarden Community School, or KCS as we call it affectionately, I have cultivated a different sort of relationship with students than the teachers have. I have observed that they have let me into their world by the way they speak to me. Obviously, teachers have a job to do, and that is to get the students ready for the world of academia or the world of work. They are taught to speak in a way that will recommend them to that world, but it is not the way they communicate with each other. As a school librarian, I am well aware that children need to access texts in their own vernacular and need to be represented in the books they read. But why were the same theories not applied to the spoken word? Why are they made to feel as if they need to change the way they speak to feel included in the world of education? This could be a form of symbolic violence enacted upon them because of the power difference in the relationships they have between them and the worlds of work and education. Because of this symbolic violence enacted upon them through the educational power structures, it could be that they are using a device known as code switching. The term began as a reference to language learning, but it has broadened to mean that a person could change all aspects of themselves to fit into the dominant culture and suppress their own. I decided to investigate if learning the words they use would improve my relationship with them, as well as finding out what my colleagues who are teachers thought of their speech patterns. Did the teachers think of the way the students talk as a barrier to the relationships with them? I decided to begin my investigation by starting to use their own words while in the library. Would they allow me entrance into their world? Or would they take me for an interloper into their space? Within my school, all first years have an English class in the library and a maths class. During English, I try to find out what they like to read and test them on their reading levels to match them with the right book, in order to make reading more enjoyable and promote it as a lifelong skill. In maths class, there are 2 teachers and myself. This class we do station teaching, and each small group gets a chance at each station. In both classes, I get to spend a lot of time talking to students and getting to know them. I value the fact that my relationship with students is different than that of a teacher. I don't give them grades and they can call me by my first name, which promotes more open dialogue. It's during these times I tried out using their slang. The first reactions were amazement. They were completely surprised and tried to quiz me on how I knew these words. I have to state that I used their words only when appropriate and did not try to shoehorn them into any conversations. I wanted them to feel as if I was a native speaker in their world. Over the next few weeks, I noticed that as students entered the library, I'd get fist bumps and told about their lives while they settled down to work. And more first years were visiting me in the library before school started. It normally takes them until the end of December to start spending free time in the library. I feel this was all very, very positive. But how did my colleagues feel? I decided to get some of my colleagues' opinions by sending out a Google form. This seemed to be the easiest way to do it, allowing for them to give their opinions anonymously. I also decided that I didn't want to burden a teacher unduly, so I kept the questions to a minimum. I didn't want to go through the process of conducting official research and the hassle of, or possibly trepidation of, having to fill out consent forms. So I asked a few teachers that I would have more contact with if I could send them the form. Only when I got verbal consent would I email it to them. The first question that was asked was, do you think it's important to know the slang students are using in your classroom? As we can see that although there are only 7 responses, they all agree that they should know what the children are talking about, whether it is using professional language or not. I did not express to the teachers that forcing our students to use the accepted language for education and work might be a form of symbolic violence that we are enacting upon them every day. I wanted to ensure that their opinions were not influenced by the topic of my assignment. Question 2. Does knowing the student slang strengthen the relationship in the classroom? Sees a split in responses. Although no teacher answered no, 3 teachers responded that it makes no difference. That might imply that they don't see language as a bond that could connect them. The theory of code switching would suggest that the teachers are members of the dominant culture and don't see the value of student vernacular, only the value of ensuring that they learn how to present within that dominant culture. It could also be that they feel that learning of those words and making mistakes would be embarrassing to them in the classroom. Question 3. Does using student slang in the classroom undermine their respect for you? This question sees quite a mixed response. Although no teacher thought it definitely would undermine respect, there were some maybes. This would imply that there is some trepidation in using their words. This might stem from a fear of being seen as uncool or old if it's not used correctly, or it could be that a teacher feels the need, not necessarily intentionally, to exert the dominant culture over the students to maintain discipline and the existent hierarchy. The other main response was that it makes no difference. It might be that teachers believe their relationship does not hinge upon the language they use with the students. It could also be that the teachers do not feel this is an area in the students' lives that they belong. I believe this is worthy of more in-depth study in the future. Brookfield's critical lens of reflection suggests that we should look at 4 areas: the self, the students, the peers, and the theory. The following are my reflections in these areas. My own personal experience of trying to use student slang as they would has been eye-opening. At first, after being tested to make sure I understood, I felt they had enjoyed me knowing them on a deeper level than other members of staff. They greet me using their words and still maintain a level of respect for me, but it is mutual. I have always strived to keep the library as a safe space for students, and I think knowing the language they use with each other is another bond we have that allows them to be themselves within the walls of the library. Capturing the students' feelings was more difficult. As I work in a secondary school, I do not have permission to conduct research via even a questionnaire, according to my management team. I can only report as to how I think the atmosphere in the library changed. I felt that they seemed more relaxed and were happy to come into the library. I saw more smiles on faces while students were in the library, and I felt there was more impromptu discussions about books and maths. The theory of code switching as a form of symbolic violence was the approach I took to the use of slang in the classroom. Code switching has proven to take its toll on minority groups. Members of the Black community in the United States find themselves having to change how they speak, how they dress, and sometimes even their name to fit into white-dominated areas of work, according to Kang et al. My peers' thoughts were recorded in the questionnaire sent to them. I feel that there is more work to be done in that area, to make teachers aware of symbolic violence and how we could be enacting it upon students, albeit unintentionally. It could be useful for continued professional development to learn about symbolic violence so that more student voice can be inserted into our teaching practices. KCS is a Band 1 school, and because it is in a disadvantaged area, it avails of extra supports such as a JCSB library. It is through my work in the library and trying to develop a relationship with students to make them feel safe that led me to be interested in their coded language. Teachers that work in this school know the challenges that our students face and do their utmost to help students succeed in what they want to do, be it academia or work. It is my observation that in preparing students for the future, they are imposing the speech patterns of what would be considered polite society. They do this with the best possible intentions. I do not believe they have considered that this might be enacting symbolic violence on them. I have also observed that the students have been pleased with me learning their slang words and how to use them. It could be that this could forge a better relationship with students if we take these speech patterns seriously. This could be the subject of more in-depth study. At the moment, there are few studies about code switching, and all of those that involve language are from a language teaching point of view. None that I could find relate non-Black American slang to symbolic violence. It is here that there could be a gap in the research.